Good evening. That was fast. My name is Bill Dunlap. I'm president of the New Hampshire Historical Society, and I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. A number of you are members of the society, and thank you for being members. Those of you who maybe are not members, I'll put in a shameless pitch that you should consider joining the New Hampshire Historical Society. It's a great asset to the city, and being a member is really, you get great perks and publications and our journal, Historical New Hampshire, programs like this one, et cetera. Anyway, but that's it for the marketing pitch. I will say one thing. Somebody said there's a really full room here. Kurt, you're a rock star. Get it? Rock star? Sorry. So anyway, we're delighted to be collaborating with the Concord Historical Society this evening to present this program. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim Milliken from the Concord Historical Society.
Thank you, Bill. You made it. Well, welcome again, this time from the Concord Historical Society. I'm Jim Milliken, and I'm the chair, and we've been around now for almost 20 years, but kind of in the background. First of all, I can't thank Bill and the New Hampshire Historical Society enough for deciding to coordinate and cooperate with this particular program. This is a fantastic turnout as well. Thank you very much. And his pitch for joining, join. This is a great organization, period. There's the marketing, and I meant it. The Concord Historical Society generally has one of these meetings the second Thursday of every month. And lately we've been at the Kimball Jenkins Estate in the Carriage House. And you're all welcome to continue to do that the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. The reason we're able to do that is we have some financial supporters, but the most outstanding one is the Walker Lecture Series. And once again, you can't say enough about them. They have been around Concord for many, many years and have continued to provide excellent programming for all of us for the grand total of 0. Unbelievable that you're able to go to those different programs for $0. It's fantastic. It's my custom usually to give you a little bit of an update on what's about to happen in the community. So I've got 4 things that I do want to tell you about because they're about to happen. And the first one is old-fashioned bargain days. Now somebody's going to say there is no such thing as old-fashioned bargain days. Well, actually, old-fashioned bargain days was sidewalk sales before that. And if you're old enough, you'll know. But lo and behold, today it's market days. And that's next week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance and the Concord Historical Society have a booth at the corner of Main and Depot. Please come by. We're giving out some gifts, and we'd love to see you and ask as many questions as you want. But I said June 20, 21, and 22. I can't emphasize enough that from 10 o'clock to 3 p.m., in cooperation with Abbott Downing Historical Society, Tom Prescott is having an open house over on Airport Road. And at this moment, there are 12 Concord coaches planning to be there, one Concord fire truck, and also another Concord commercial truck. Now that's the old Abbott Downing story. And essentially they went out of business in 1920. But you need to go over there. I understand there's going to be some food and entertainment, but that's from 10 to 3. So now you're going to have to be in 2 places at once. Although I think there's a bus or some transportation from Main Street over to Tom Prescott. Follow newspaper, it'll tell you. But that's a terrific program. There's another one that's going on that you're probably well, two more. We very much appreciate what the Pennacook Historical Society of New Hampshire does. And they're having an open house on June 29th from, I think it's like 10 to 3 or 10 to 4, something like that. But the Pennacook Historical Society is celebrating their home up there. They've got a home that was built in 1774, and it's, you're going to miss it. You'll miss something if you don't go ahead up there. And the last one I have for you is totally different. The Black Heritage Trail Committee of New Hampshire we're having a reading on the State House Plaza, June 29th, a reading on the State House Plaza of Frederick Douglass's speech. And it was about, by the way, the advertising you're going to be seeing eventually, it says, his speech was, "What to the slave is your 4th of July?" In other words, what does 4th of July mean to people back when they were slaves? And that fits right in with Black heritage. So there, that was enough. Kurt's got a great speech coming, so you stand by. To introduce him, he said, just introduce me, I'm Kurt Swenson. Well, Kurt's family has been in the granite business since 1883. You probably used Concord coaches at the time. And when his great-grandfather started John Swenson Granite Company in Concord. As a teenager, Kurt spent his summers working in the quarries and then went on to earn a degree at Colby College, I assume in Maine, and Boston College School of Law. And he was a lawyer for several years until he decided to come back to the family business. And eventually he returned to the Granite Company full-time, and in 1880, yeah, not bad. You're looking good. Yeah. 1984, and has served as president and CEO of Rock of Ages, the largest integrated granite quarry and manufacturer in North America, and he did that until 2008. And then in 2016, he was part of the group that sold the company. And we're going to get all that information in just a minute. Please help us welcome Kurt.
Hello, everybody. I have had the 3-week cold. I don't know if anybody else out there has had it. I think I'm getting over it, but if I break out coughing, I apologize for that. Hopefully my voice will hold up through this talk. Thanks to Jim, thanks to the Historical Society. I want to also give special thanks to my wife of 57 years who has put up with a lot of stuff, which you will see soon. I also want to thank Sarah Galligan and Elizabeth Dubrill of the Historical Society staff who have been, how do I say it, co-editors, authors, coaches to get me through this talk, and also provided all of the slides and other good stuff that you're going to see. I want to start off by asking, is anyone out there ever been an employee of the Swenson Granite Company? Not a one, other than me. Has anyone ever bought a product from the Swenson Granite Company? Okay. Thank you to all customers of the Swenson Granite Company. The reason I sort of raised that is my philosophy always was that the most important assets of any company are the employees and the customers. And that may surprise you. You're going to hear a lot of talk from me tonight about assets and quarries and equipment and stuff, but in my view, it's the customers and employees that count. All right, so with all that stuff said, Sarah, are you ready? Okay. We'll put up the first slide. This is an engraving that goes back to 1837 or 1870, something. It shows Rattlesnake Hill, and you can see the ledges of granite shown on that etching. And there's a wagon with granite, and it's bringing it down to this sailboat that goes up and down the Merrimack. And that was back in the old days, the way they really had to transport the granite was by boat. Things have changed a lot since then, but anyway, that's slide one. Now we go to slide two. The Swenson Granite was founded by my great-grandfather in 1883. He was from Sweden, didn't speak a word of English, but was educated by a kindly woman in New York City where he landed, and ended up here in Concord as a result of his cousin, Ola Anderson. Ola Anderson's sister dragged him up to Concord and it got him into the granite business. So before that he was in Kansas City doing stuff with gas lit streetlights. So that was his entry to Concord, into Concord, and we always had a fight with a Fletcher Granite Company. Herb Fletcher always claimed that they were the oldest granite company in the whole wide world, which of course not true. There's a lot of old granite companies in Europe, but we have here, and you can see it there, the original bill of sale to John Swenson from proving that the company was founded in 1883. At that point, it was just a stone shed. We had no quarries or plants. It was just a stone manufacturing business. Next slide, Sarah. Okay, so this is the real hard rock band right here. A guy by the name of Arthur Kurlansky, this is way off the subject, owned Western Advertising, who I got to know back when I was practicing law. And he was quite a clever guy, and he said, you know, we need to advertise this. So he made a poster out of this picture, and it said on it, Hard Rock Band. And everybody thought it was great. And we sold a lot of those posters at the Rock of Ages Visitor Center in Barre, Vermont. We didn't have any visitor center at Swenson Granite ever, but anyway, that picture shows in the bottom left, the founder, John Swenson, is on the right-hand side, and we believe that the person on the left is my grandfather, John Arthur Swenson. So that's an old and original picture. Next slide. You can see the modern means of transportation. Back in the old days, that's the way they had to do it. They preferred to do it, frankly, on ice. You can understand why. They'd wait for the ground to freeze, and they could slide the blocks down the hill, which is a hell of a lot easier than trying to move them up and down with horses. We purchased, this is way before my time, so I'm believing in history. I'm not trying to make it up, but in approximately 1904, we bought the second quarry. There were two quarries bought by Swenson. Ultimately, Swenson obviously ended up owning all of them because all the other places went out of business over time. I think we can go to the next slide, Sarah. All right, so This is a real family business back in the day. And this picture shows John Swenson is seated. To his left is his wife, Ellen Anderson Swenson. On the far right, we believe, is Omer Swenson, would be his oldest son. Next to him is John Arthur Swenson, my grandfather. And then in the baby on the left-hand side is Guy Swenson, who was the youngest of the boys. And the other gal is Auntie Bess Swenson, a wonderful old lady. I never met the founder, but I met all the rest of the family, and they always had great family gatherings every Christmas, which were always a lot of fun, and always held at the home of Guy A. Swenson, because Guy had the most children and the biggest house. I think John Swenson died in 1918, and his three sons, took over the business at that time. Next slide, Sarah. Oh, got it back up. Arch McDonald Painting, now at the Historical Society. In the 40s and 50s and early 60s, Swenson grew quite a bit. It started off buying the Swenson Green Quarry and the Conway Pink Granite Quarry up in Conway. Those were old established quarries. Actually, the company that owned them went broke. Swenson's always bought things that were going broke because they were cheaper that way. But in any event, those were quarries that, as far as I can determine, were never really operated. But the granite inventory on hand was used for a couple of the buildings in Concord. They bought the Swenson Pink Quarry in South Berwick, Maine in 1950. In 1953, the Woodbury Quarry in Woodbury, Vermont. That is a very important quarry to the Swenson operations at this stage of the game. It was used to build the Pennsylvania State Capitol building way back in 1902 or something like that, and that's why the Swensons bought it in 50, thinking that someday they'll, put an addition on, and sure enough they did, and I think it was in 1980 that finally happened, back when I was running the company. In 57, they bought a green quarry in York, Maine, which was close to the beach. It's probably not the smartest place to put a quarry that's making a lot of noise. They also bought a quarry in Vinyl Haven, Maine, another smart destination, because we had to ship everything by ferry. And you talk about, well, the logistics were difficult. Then they bought a quarry in Agunquit, Maine. That was really near the beach. And as you might expect, these things where people are making loud explosions, it doesn't go over good with the neighbors. And then finally in 1969, they bought the Franklin Quarry up in Franklin, Maine. All these quarries, most of these quarries that I've listed here, other than the Woodbury Gray Quarry, were an effort to get into the colored granite scheme. I mean, Swenson basically had gray quarries, and architects started to want pinks and blacks and stuff like that. So that's what they did. Next slide. This is a slide. This is an aerial shot taken, my guess, about 1940, before the war, maybe 1935, something like that, between 35 and 40. It shows the Swenson plants on North State Street. Some look just the same right now, actually. And the gang saws, which were also very noisy things back then, they were shot gang saws run with like BBs. And that was how it was done way back when. The technology has changed dramatically, of course. I guess we're done with that slide, Sarah. And this is the world-famous Mill 4. I have to tell you the story of Mill 4. Mill 4 was bought in order to fabricate the CBS building in New York, which is probably one of Swenson's most famous building granite projects. The black granite was quarried in Canada by the Robitaille family, who we've known I've even known for a number of years. And that was, I would say, sort of the best of times for Swenson Granite when that building was built. And then we'll go to the next slide. This picture was taken at Uncle Guy's house, as you can tell, because all the people there now. Elaine Swenson always points out, isn't it nice they have a family photograph with none of the women shown? There is something very amusing about that, but those are all the Swenson men in 1957, and if you look very carefully, there's a picture sitting on a table at the far right side of the picture. That picture is David Swenson, who was at that time in 1957 fighting in the Korean War and was unable to be present. But they got him in the picture. So I don't want to bore you with all the names, but I'm the guy, the handsome young man on the left-hand side with a really loud tie and coat on. And my brother Kevin is the one with the bow tie kneeling in the front row. The three brothers is Uncle Omer, my grandfather, John Arthur, and then Guy Swenson. My father is in the middle in the back. Malcolm Swenson, who was also in the company, is in the far left. Andy Swenson, who represented the company for a number of years. Some of you may know him from Concord. He's now deceased. And John Swenson is the gentleman just over my grandfather's shoulder. So we really were a family company all the way along. And as I said, that's back when the times were good. So now we move to the next stage, the wonder years. This is a funny slide just because Sarah Galligan was looking through my files and she found this, and that's my handwriting, and it's a miracle we survived. Let's just put it that way. The situation in the company and in the industry in 73, 74, 75 was very, very tough. First of all, the technology had all gone over to the Italians. They were way ahead of the Americans in terms of production equipment, particularly gang saws, so-called, they could cut granite about an inch thick. We couldn't. We could cut it maybe 2 inches at best. There were obviously significant freight savings, and cost savings in putting the building up, and we just didn't have the right technology. So, next slide. In January of 1974, the Swenson Board of Directors voted to make an immediate and orderly withdrawal from the building business. And I need to understand what that meant. That represented 90% of our business. And you sort of say, how is this all going to work? Well, let's say it took a lot of talking with banks and others. We were in really bad shape. And the game plan was, what we're going to do is we're going to exit the building Granite business, sell all assets related to that business, and build up the Granite curb business. So what that meant is basically the following. Let's go to the next slide. Now, as you can tell, this is a very important business meeting. On the left is me, Kurt, and this picture is in 1981. At the time, in 1974, when we implemented these steps, I was 29, and my brother was 24. So I took a leave of absence from the law firm of Wigan and Nury and became executive vice president and general counsel. And my brother, I immediately moved into the curb sales position because he was working as a laborer in the quarry, and I figured he had the right name so that people would trust him and say, oh, you're Swenson, yeah, you must be okay. So he took over sales. We got lucky and signed a lease with an option to purchase to sell the building Granite facilities to my cousin David Swenson and the guy who ran the building Granite division. That was a deal that we had to make because otherwise we were definitely cooked. The deal got made, and unfortunately, thereafter, David and Jerry Russo, the company went broke, which didn't surprise me any, just because it was a very, very tough business to try and compete in against the level of competition being given to us by the Italians back then. We closed a New York City office, which was the last thing in the world we needed. I had to do a little commando raid and send one of our truck drivers down with one of our big trucks and told them, just take everything out of the office, don't tell anybody, just move it out. And we moved it, they moved it out, they came back with the truck. And then I sent the letter to the landlord saying, yes, we've had to leave, we're broke, we don't have any money. And we've taken care of getting the stuff out of the office. We sold sheds 2 and 3 to Corvo Routhier. Some of you may remember that Corvo Routhier, good old Al Corvo, came up in the middle of the winter. He was a great businessman, by the way. And he said, Kurt, okay, I'm prepared to buy. I said, well, that's great, Al. We really need it. He said, I'll give you $50,000. I said, Al, that's more than half of what it's worth. Come on, you got to do better than that. I mean, we're going broke. We really need help. Well, so he took pity on me. And ultimately, we did a deal, I think it was about $100,000, which at the time was a godsend to get that cash. And then I sold all the quarries that I just told you about in an earlier slide, all of which were not useful for our company at all, other than Woodbury, which to this day is still an important quarry. And then the final step was, it was kind of a dicey family situation because Malcolm Swenson had bought out one of our cousins who owned about a third of the company, and whose wife was very ill and had to move to Arizona. And so we bought Malcolm Swenson out, my brother and I, my father, and his brother David helped out. So it was a family effort to buy out Malcolm so that we could affect that deal, and Malcolm could pay off some debt that he had taken on to acquire the stock, yada, yada, yada. But it came together, and it was important that it come together. So Malcolm retired. I mean, it was all done in good faith, and, you know, it was a tough deal, but everybody did it, and the family came together and made it all happen. And Malcolm lived happily ever after and stayed in the business and became actually very well known as a major broker in the granite business around the world. Okay, so next slide. Oh boy, you're going crazy here. You're way ahead of me. In 1975 to 83, basically, this is recovery time. You know, we need to just straighten things out, make sure people get paid all, you know, pay out all of the creditors that we owed, which we did. My father passed away in '79. He was, at that time, acting as CEO. He had rheumatoid arthritis. And wasn't very active and couldn't be. And then we started advertising, and there's one ad that we did, which is basically the same photo you seen earlier. It celebrated our 100th. We had a really quite a fun family reunion for the 100th down in Rye, New Hampshire. Okay. Next slide. Okay, onward and upward now. I heard a lot of rumors about Rock of Ages being for sale. Rock of Ages was at the time probably the largest quarrier in North America, and had a great business, monument business. We were not in the monument business. Berry granite is probably the finest memorial grade granite in the world. And so we said, well, what the heck? I mean, we can't just let it go. We got to try. Now, it's kind of stupid thinking that, you know, it was a $20 million company in sales, and we were doing $2 million, and we were just coming out of being broke. But we said, well, okay, let's see what we can do. So we start the negotiations, and we had quite a strong bit of competition from the management group of Rock of Ages, who are not at all pleased to have a competitor, because they thought, you know, they were going to get handed the company on a silver platter. It was being sold by Nortec, which at that time owned Rock of Ages. And so I flew to New York to meet with Nortec, and they didn't laugh me out. I thought they'd laugh me out right out of the place, but I had hired some really good investment bankers based on the advice of my college roommate. You find out in life that friendships and people you trust, you know, stay people you know and trust, and if you keep them, it all ends up working out. So anyway, off I go to New York, and I've got the investment bankers, and of course I have to first meet with them and convince them that it's okay, we can make it happen, show them how we're going to cut the SG&A, how we're going to change the costs that they had. It was a very perfect situation to be able to cut costs. And I convinced the investment bankers, and so then the job became to try and convinced Nortec that we could do it. But once we had the investment bankers, they brought in Citicorp, and Citicorp is a believable kind of entity, and they were lined up to loan us the money until one day, all of a sudden, they decide, we're not going to do this deal. Thank you very much, Mr. Swenson. We're not going to do it. Ay, ay, ay. And I, spent all this time, effort, try to make it happen. And lo and behold, this investment firm, Morgan, Lewis, Githens, and On from New York, they were great people. And they said, okay, we'll get somebody else. Boom. What did they do? They got Manny Hanny, Manufacturers Hanover Trust. And I mean, we were desperate because we had signed an agreement and it had to close on a certain date and this and that. And so a guy flies up to meet me in Barrie, the Barrie airport, in a private jet from Manny Hanny. And he's one guy and an associate, just somebody carrying a briefcase. And I'm saying, oh boy, here we go. And this guy's name was Terry Keegan. I'll never forget it. And we're meeting at Rock of Ages in Barrie. And he gets the tour. I go through the spiel, tell him, what we're going to do, da-da-da-da-da. He looks at me, he says, Kurt, we're going to do it. I said, what? We're going to do it. Okay, fine. So we needed $20 million to buy. The company was the purchase price, plus I had to have some sort of line of credit. So we borrowed, we got a $25 million line of credit from Manny Hanny, and the investment bankers put in $3 million. And Swenson Granite borrowed $1 million from the Bank of New Hampshire and put that in as our equity contribution. And we won. We got the company. Despite the lawsuit from the Rock of Ages management guy sued us, we couldn't do it, the world was coming to an end. Well, when we closed, his argument sort of lost a lot of steam. But anyway, it got done. It probably was the most important move of Swenson Granite in terms of scaling up. So, next slide, Sarah. Of course, we were accused of being a monopoly. I mean, it's really kind of funny when you think about it. We had our little quarries here in Concord, New Hampshire, and Rock of Ages was pretty big, and they had a Canadian operation with a couple of quarries in Canada. And so anyway, a monopoly inquiry was started by Senator Jeffords' office of Vermont, just to inquire, to make sure this was clean and, not going to violate the antitrust laws. Well, we managed to get by that little issue as well, which finally went away. Just want to make sure I don't get too far ahead of myself here. I mean, sort of the long and short of the Rock of Ages acquisition is we had projected certain savings, all of which were achieved, in fact, exceeded. One of the beauties of Morgan Lewis is that one of their partners came up to me and said, Kurt, you need to buy us out. You need to buy us out real soon because you're doing too well. And you're not going to be able to afford to buy us out if you wait too long. And that really, was really important advice because, when you come from my background going the other way, you're always being very careful and conservative. But he was right. And so we bought them out for double what they had invested. Best money you could ever pay. We were delighted to pay them, and they were delighted to accept the money. And so at that point, we owned Rock of Ages basically free and clear, other than, the base CIT debt. I should say at this part, I should have said at the beginning, Dick Kimball, who's a guy probably nobody in this room knows, but Dick Kimball was an investment banker. Well, he's a guy with a Bigelow company down in Manchester. He really was the guy who helped us get Swenson out of trouble. And then I got him involved. I hired him after we bought Rock of Ages because I knew we needed some pretty heavy firepower to try and move ahead. So some of the steps we took after buying out Morgan Lewis is we bought a 10% interest in an outfit called Polycor, which you'll hear more about in a minute, because Polycor ultimately ended up being part of the company that we sold to. And the other two things I want to mention, Swenson Granite merged with Anderson Freiberg, which is a well-known monument firm up in Barre, Vermont. And the reason that merger was important was the two guys that I really wanted with us. One guy by the name of Bob Pope was a Barre guy, but went to Tuck, highfalutin, smart guy. I needed, some bench strength in the company, and Peter Freiberg, one of the Freibergs, was the sales manager for Rock of Ages and a well-known industry sales guy, and we needed that kind of help as well. And the last thing we did during this sort of phase was we formed Rock of Ages Asia Corporation. We had a joint venture company in Japan, which was kind of a fun adventure. I don't know how much I should say about this. Well, I will say, it was very interesting how things worked out, because as time went on, some of these deals ended up being really good and some ended up being really bad. At the time frame in the 1990s, right after we did Rock of Ages, we were very active in opening retail Granite stores here in New England. And the list is all there: Concord, Amherst, Westbrook, Hanover, Mass. We had one that didn't work. And I always have to admit, when something's not working, you have to quit and stop and close it. So we opened a place in Kingston, Rhode Island, which we thought was a smart place. But it turns out that the people in Rhode Island, almost all the granite is set by masons. And, it was just hopeless for us to make any headway selling granite in Rhode Island. Okay, next. Okay, well, we needed something more exciting to do, I guess. I don't know how exactly it all came together, but I persuaded Dick Kimball to join Rock of Ages, and we decided that we should go public. Now, the reason we decided we should go public was that the death care industry had started to consolidate, and companies like SCI, Service Corporation International, and others were making very successful initial public offerings. And we figured, well, Rock of Ages, we're in the death care business. It's a big part of our business. Swenson was not in the death care business. So we said, well, okay, what we'll do is we'll take Rock of Ages public, we'll leave Swenson private, and keep Swenson focused on landscape, the landscape business, and the Rock of Ages will handle all the monument stuff, and we'll build up a big, huge retail business. And so we did. And we, has anybody, well, if you've never been through an initial public offering, it's really quite amazing, because you have to go around all over the world. We hired Raymond James down in Florida to do it. And so, okay, they like the pitch, they refine the pitch, they make you sound smarter than you really are. And, they get all the right catchphrases and everything. And so, okay, now we're going to go do our roadshow. And that's the part where you try and sell a stock so that you can actually make a public offering. So we started off in Europe and Berlin and Edinburgh, Scotland, and this place and Milan, Italy, and, flying around like crazy fools at this stage on commercial flights, making our pitch, that we're going to be wonderful. We're going to be the world's best monument retailer and so forth. And so then finished in Europe. Okay, here we come to the United States. Had to rent a private jet at great expense because you have to travel all day, every day to numerous cities and pitch everybody, oh, we're going to be the best in the world, da-da-da-da-da. Well, we did that. And sure enough, when all was said and done, the investors, the public, said, oh, we like this. So they paid us 53 times trailing earnings, 53 times trailing earnings, which is stupid. But fine, we're not going to turn down the money, to go public. And so we had the money to implement the strategy. I think we're time, oh yeah, so here we go, yeah. So, since we had the money, we bought 80 retail monument locations in the states shown, quite a broad section of states. Basically, these were people I had known when I was running Rock of Ages, a lot of them. And at the same time, we made a move into Elberton, Georgia, where we bought a bunch of quarries in Elberton, Georgia. And the reason we did that was because Barre, Vermont and Elberton, Georgia were the suppliers of the highest grade gray granites. And we bought the quarries we bought in Elberton were the quarries that the Japanese were granite the Japanese were buying. They were also buying our granite. So that was going to give us a sort of a huge leg up, because we would control most of the export market for North American gray granite. So, say, hey, boy, this is good. We're really cooking along here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Up. Now, that handsome young man on the right is me. This is back in, that picture is 1963. When I was working in the quarries, the guy on the left is Ralph Ingmanson, from Norway, a wonderful guy who worked side by side with me. So it all didn't work. The retail thing didn't work at all. It was a disaster. I went through 2 management groups. The first one was very good, a guy by the name of John Keith. He knew the business. He was great. He came to me one day and said, "Kurt, I can't do it. These people are idiots." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, they won't listen. They do it the old way. They don't listen to the good, better, best, the sales program, all the work we've done to make it all work." So I probably should have just at that point said, "Yeah, you're right." But I went and hired some wicked high expense SG&A guys, you know, GE and higher kinds of people. And they did it, and they didn't do any better. And so that's when I said, "That's it, boom, we're going to stop." So we unwound the IPO. We sold all the retail outlets for around $8 million after paying 50 or 60, whatever the number was. We sold all of the quarries that we had acquired in Elberton. And just said, okay, we'll go back to basics, which we did, except Rock of Ages was still public, which is a little bit of a problem. And I retired in 2008 as CEO just because it would look better to the shareholders. You know, that guy did a bad job, boom, you know, time to go. So I went. I was still the chairman of both Rock of Ages and Swenson. Next slide's here. So in 2010, we buy back Rock of Ages. Now let's just say that was another great adventure in learning. First of all, people love to buy stocks that they really don't know much about because they think they're going to try and make a killing. Well, when you go and try and buy it back, all of a sudden you're screwing them. Oh boy, you know, this is really bad. And we were told to expect this. We had good lawyers. We were represented by Skadden Arps, great law firm, very expensive law firm, but very good one. You have to expect you're going to get sued. Well, you sort of don't believe it, you know. You sort of say, well, we can get through this. We've been through a lot of stuff, you know. We can get through it. Well, we got sued big time, and we offered to buy back Rock of Ages. Rock of Ages was selling at $3.30 a share after what I would call the busted IPO. And so we offered to buy it back initially for $3.80, and then we had to have a negotiation. We have to have a bipartisan board level group, and they pushed us up to $5.25. We finally agreed on $5.25. Well, that, of course, was not satisfactory for the class action lawsuit people. So they required, we had to make a settlement with them, which, of course, we had to pay to everybody except ourselves, since we were buying back our own company. So you learn that malpractice insurance, or the insurance that you buy from the insurance companies to protect you from a class action lawsuit, is not really that good, because they expect you to pay half the judgment. They don't tell you that, but anyhow, sooner or later you reach the stage, you say, all right, we're out, we got to get out, let's stop. And we bought them out, and we own the company again. I think I'm running too long, Sarah, no? Okay. So anyway, we bought them back, and we'll go to the next slide. Oh, these are just some showy slides. I thought you'd like to see some of the buildings that we own some really good quarries, the Bethel White Quarry being one, Salisbury Pink being another. We got the Salisbury Pink Quarry in the deals we did in Elberton. Bethel White we had from the beginning. This is the Emirates Palace Hotel in, is it Abu Dhabi? I mean, that's got a huge amount of pink granite in it from Salisbury, North Carolina. All of the buildings basically in the world, the big buildings in the world, are all now made not in the United States. They're all basically sawn and cut in Italy or China. I mean, we saw that trend coming when I sold the building business the first time. It was pretty clear we weren't going to be competitive. But this is what it's turned into. But I love this photo just because the contrast is so crazy between what looks like an old, wonderful, some sort of a building and the skyscrapers in the back. Crazy. Oh, time to say goodbye. Sarah Galligan chose this photograph. And when I saw it, I said, oh, you horse's ass. Sorry. But it did make me laugh. But it's a nice, sweet photo. But, you know, there comes a time you say, how long am I going to do this? And, you know, how do we exit? And it really is interesting. You know, I'm very thankful for all the choices I had in life. But, you know, you just say, okay, what's next? How do I get out? And you talk to lawyers and you dream up these schemes of trusts and this and that last forever, and you just say, wait a minute, this is all stupid. Sell. And so then you start the process all over again, except you're selling, not buying. And it was an interesting exercise, and I have to say it was interesting to see the range of offers. You could, 5 times EBITDA multiples. That's earnings before interest and taxes. That's the way the acquisition world works, is on that multiple issues, and we could have got 5 times EBITDA all day, but you really wanted to do a little better than that. And luckily we had a competitor who was desperate to buy our company and paid 8 times EBITDA, which was a fair price, for our shareholders. 100%. I was curious, as a family owner, you sort of wonder, what's the family going to do? And 100% in favor, which sort of surprised me. I mean, I thought there might be one emotional holdout, but the deal was good enough that there were none. And so we sold, and that was in 2016. So, that's what, almost 8 years ago now. Just as a little add to that. Oh, you want to put that? Not yet? Or you want to wait? All right. This poem is a good one. It's in the back of the room on a granite slate. Donald Hall wrote it, and it's about building a cart and loading it with all your stuff from the garden and then selling it, and every year. And it's quite thought-provoking poem, at least for somebody like me who's been through a few things. I want to give you an update of what's happening now to the Swenson Granite Company and the industry. I'm going to try and make it as brief as I can. After we sold to an outfit called TorQuest, the largest private equity firm in Canada, headquartered in Toronto. They, in turn, sold like 4 or 5 years later, which is the normal turn time for private equity buys and sells. They sold to a company, the name is escaping me right now, Birch Hill Partners, also of Toronto, about 4 years ago. And Birch Hill Partners has begun, sadly, a slash and burn approach because they are not getting the returns that they want, and they really don't have an exit. You know, the public markets are tough these days. You know, who wants to buy a granite company? You know, tough issue. I'm glad I don't face that issue, frankly. But sadly, last week, they decided to shut down the Concord quarry operations. They're currently not running the quarry at all. They are running the curb plant, which is a world-class curb plant built by me, not by me, but I mean by us very recently, and it's a good one. But they're trucking all the granite that they're quarrying from Vermont and from Maine to Concord to be manufactured and then shipped back to the marketplace. The reason is the Concord quarry is in what I would call a development mode, and that means they're at a stage where they have to make additional investments in order to increase the output of the quarry. And they've decided, well, why would we do that when we get all these other quarries that are producing just fine? And what I'm afraid of is that they're going to do that same thing in the other quarries that they own in the area. I don't know if they will or not. But basically, they're the last player standing. All the rest, the Fletcher Granite Company is gone. Tony Ramos's company is a shadow of itself. He's in Rhode Island. He doesn't own any of the quarries in Massachusetts, the big curb quarries. Those are they're all converted to crushing plants. Of course, as you might expect, you know, selling crushed stone near Boston is not a bad business as compared to trying to take it out of the ground and ship it over to Italy to be fabricated into some building. So I think I'm done, Sarah, am I? Yeah, okay. I will take any and all questions.
All right, I'll come around. Hold on, let me get you.
When you mentioned that Italy was beating you in the building market because they were able to cut a thinner stone with the type of equipment that they had, what prevented you from getting that type of equipment and to compete against them?
$5 million. I didn't have it. I mean, you know, there was no way with the asset base that we had that we could borrow the money. I didn't want to borrow the money because I wasn't even sure, even if we invested in the technology, we really didn't have the colors that we needed to compete.
Is there another question?
Kurt, a question about, you did the IPO and raised some capital and you're going to build out a big retail network, and what you said didn't work out well. I'm curious, on the retail network, was it that there wasn't market demand, did product, things people were interested in changed, or was it, what do you think the reason was that the retail business didn't do what you hoped it, originally had hoped it would do?
Well, this is speculation, but I think the model that we had sort of focused on was the Swenson Granite retail network that we had set up. We owned all the stores. All the employees were people we had hired and trained. And with the retail monument network, they were all people who had been in the business and had sold monuments their own way. And we just couldn't change the mentality. It was basically hopeless. I mean, when John Keith said, "I can't do this," that was a big blow for me because he was the smartest sales guy, monument sales guy that I ever met. And, you know, I should have said then, I should have said, "Jesus, John, if you can't do it, nobody can," and stop, but I didn't. I made one more try, you know, that didn't work, and then I stopped.
Kurt, can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of what happened to the company during the Second World War? What did you make?
We became, this was before my time, sir, so I'm reporting the historical side from what I know. We made the best submarine nets in New England. That's basically the way we survived. If you go on one of the boat tours out of Portsmouth, you'll from time to time get a guide who will say, "Well, as you know, this whole area was protected by submarine nets." And I heard one guy say, "Made by the Swenson Granite Company in Concord, New Hampshire." And so that's what they did. I mean, and they, not just for the Piscataqua, but for other rivers as well. I mean, I think there was one up near Bath, Maine, and thank God. I mean, you know, they found a way to keep people employed. Quarries weren't running, as far as I know, at all. I don't know if we were, I wasn't there. I don't think we were manufacturing a lot of stuff. But if anything that could have been made, you know, by the equipment we had that would have helped the war effort, you know, would have probably been made in the Concord plants. But it was clearly the submarine nets, and there's some great pictures in the Historical Society collection of the submarine nets stacked up.
I think you referred to the curb business, and I'm wondering, is there a law or some incentive for curbing in New Hampshire to be made of granite? And is that true, and is it also true in other states?
Interesting question. Of course, as a granite manufacturer, we always worked like hell to assure that granite curb was the choice of all contractors. A lot of the localities require granite curb. It's more of a local spec than a state spec, although I think there is a state spec, you know, about granite curbing, but it's not as it's not airtight. It's the right product to use. You know, if you use a life cycle analysis, it lasts a hell of a lot longer than concrete. But I don't think there's, I think smart people know it's the right product to use.
Any other questions? Oh, one more, last question.
Okay, what makes a good quality granite?
Well,
Or how do you evaluate
Well, I should let my geologist friends answer the question. But most people would say it's the mineral content and the ability not to absorb water. The absorption rate, so-called, has a big factor in how long and what color. You know, the issue is discoloration. And so absorption rate is important. Berry granite has the lowest absorption rate at like 2%, whereas Concord is like 4%. And, you know, there's people in the room who can tell you exactly what the mineral content is between the feldspars and the this and the that. Lee, you want to answer that?
It's the ratio of the mica and the quartz and the feldspars. And there's different feldspars. The pink granite has a feldspar that weathers a little faster than the white. Hence, the old man of the mountain, Conway granite, is pink. And that's what led to the eventual deterioration there. But also the grain size. So we're talking about grains as the minerals that make up the rock. So the quartz, the mica, the feldspar, and if they're uniform in grain size, it cuts much easier. We have all the kinds of granites, but some of them we don't even use. There's the Kinsman quartz granite, which is very coarse grain. And all the boulders that you find that are left around that the old farmers didn't cut up are the Kinsman. They cut up the Concord granite boulders because they split easily.
Okay, this is the last question.
So are you saying there's no more granite production in the Granite State?
No. Well, is there any quarry production in the Granite State? I am not sure.
So Concord was the last one?
I don't, you know, I believe it was, unless somebody knows any different.
All right, any final words, Kurt?
Oh, one more question.
Oh. All right. Did you have a question?
Oh, there's one over there.
Yeah, were you ever involved with any of the many quarries in the Milford area?
No, no. I know of them. I looked at investing. We looked at buying one of them. We didn't invest. Last one.
Oh, you got it, okay. We live in the perimeter area of the quarry up on Rattlesnake Hill, and it is going full blast. I mean, we've lived there since 70s, and there's production going there, very loud, all day long. It used to be, in the early years, every once in a while we'd get a little boom, a blast here and there, and it was basically quiet. But it has never been so loud, so I question how is this phasing down, or what are they doing up there?
Well, I'll tell you what, here's what happened. They spent somewhere between $8 and $10 million trying to expand that quarry. And they did it right at the top. That's why you heard all the explosions and all the stuff that went on. I wasn't here, so I don't know. But it clearly, I drove up there yesterday just to look around to see what was going on. And there was nobody at all in the quarry, no equipment running at all in the quarry. But they were very active trying to open up what we would call a new development area. And they made a lot of bad choices of areas to go to. And I think that's why they basically have said, okay, we need to stop. I think that's the good news for you. I mean, I believe they've stopped.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Kurt.